So I'm real happy to be here. I was out of Wisconsin for about 15 years. I grew up down in Kenosha County, and it's becoming more and more urban, but it's another farming county primarily. I grew up, you know, on a little piece cut out of Grandma and Grandpa's farm, and so I have probably a similar mindset to a lot of you guys. I lived lots of different places in between and got back to Wisconsin, and eventually ended up with DNR in the South Central region. And I'd say the best part of the job, well, two best parts, getting to know my state again, because I end up getting, even though I work in the South Central region, which is 11 counties down in here, I've gotten to travel all over the state for different conferences and meetings and things like that. And then, but then the really best part is coming and talking to groups and meeting them. One of the first things I learned working in the lakes program is I might look at a lake and go, ew, but the people who live on that lake love that lake. And so instead of looking at the things that I see that are wrong with it, I learned real quickly, look and see the things that are right with it, that they want to enhance or maybe tweak, and, you know, start with what you love and then work to make it better, kind of a thing. So I really am grateful for these opportunities. And seeing what you guys are doing, it blows my mind that you're only 6 years old. So my main focus at work is aquatic invasive species, so things in wetlands, lakes, and streams, although I'm very aware of terrestrial species too that are invasive, out in the woods, out on the prairies. We've got more than our share of stuff out there coming in from everything from things that came in ballast water, to things being carried in by fishermen from other parts of the country and the world, to things just blowing in the air and really loving it as the climate changes, which nobody's going to make me not say the word climate change. So I'm going to show some ID. I've worked in ID pictures kind of throughout this, except for a few key species, to kind of focus on the fact that there's so many invasives out there, and there's some bottom line things that we can all do regardless. And then talking about the prevention and some species to specifically look for. So an invasive species, whether it's aquatic or not, is a species that comes in, it's not native to the area, and it can take over. We have lots of things that are non-native that get brought in. I've got things in my garden. They're never going to take over anything. They don't produce viable seed that's going to make it through the winter. They don't spread rampantly. I learned the hard way. My first invasive species was a chocolate-scented mint. I learned real quickly you don't just throw mint in the garden because you will not have much else after a while. So there's plenty of things that are out there. There's other things, you know, that are nuisance species. We don't really consider invasive. But the invasives are those things that come in, they have nothing that's going to compete with them because they are so good at reproduction. They get an early start in the season. They don't have anybody who wants to eat them in the area. There's no diseases that happen to live in the area that attack them. And they start out-competing the natives, whether they're plants or critters. So the reason we care about that, there's a number of reasons. We have a law in the States called NR 40. It's the Invasive Species Rule. And they literally define it. An invasive species is a species that can cause damage to the economy, ecological damage, or impacts to recreation. So I keep adding to this list. It started out with a couple things under each, and then I added a few more. One of them that I hadn't had on there until recently was increased erosion of shorelines and sedimentation. Japanese hops, Japanese knotweed, they're so dense. They shade everything out. They may be allelopathic, which means that they're putting out chemicals or something to prevent other things from growing. I can't remember. I don't know that specifically for those species. Yet nothing but mud under there, and the water races right over that mud and washes it into your stream along with the nutrients and the pollutants that might be there. So more and more that we can think of, we just don't want to give ourselves that kind of bad dream, so we have things to do about it. So here's my little poster child for streams, the New Zealand mud snail. The first one in the States was 1987 in Idaho. And they've been marching westward, but it's taken a long, or eastward, it's been taking a long time. And they're pretty much throughout the trout fishing streams in the mountainous regions of the western United States. But the first ones to show up this side of the Mississippi were actually, the first ones were up in, there are some Great Lakes areas. They're a different clone. The New Zealand mud snail is clonal. Each one of these little ones can give live birth to about 230 to 260 babies a year that are ready to start crawling and eating. And they're born with brood pouches full of their 230 to 260 babies. So do the math. 2 or 3 snails on a fisherman's boot get into your stream. They can each have 200 some babies a year. The cycle can continue right off the bat. When we found them in Badger Mill Creek this year, 2016, they were abundant enough that you could see them. They can get up to, I believe it's 100,000 or 500,000 per square meter. Insane number to imagine. And when we found them, you could see them already. The benthic samples that were being taken by Madison Sewerage District at that site hadn't been analyzed up at the bug lab at Stevens Point yet. So we put a priority on those and they expedited it. There was 1 or 2 snails in those benthic samples. So there was surely more than that. You're not sampling the entire reach, but there was surely more than 1 or 2, but now you can see them. Then you couldn't even see that they're in the water. So it took 1 year for that population to explode. There's no known method to get rid of them. So like many things, they come in fast and we're still learning. We're still doing research. People all over the world are doing research. And so in the meantime, we have to focus on prevention, and this is true. For these guys, if you are going out in a stream, one thing I have, probably say it somewhere else in here too, or I should, bleach will not kill them. One of the things that I did I did a couple of Trout Unlimited presentations, and a lot of them go, oh, well, bleach will kill them, right? If I spray down with bleach and then rinse my stuff, bleach will not kill them. They have a little trap door. They close that thing up tight. They can live for almost a month out of water as long as conditions are moist. So bleach solution doesn't penetrate. This Virkon, we have farmers in here. I've been told Virkon is often used by dairy farmers to clean hooves. So I would like to find that out for sure at some point, but I have read and heard that. Copper sulfate. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if copper sulfate's been tried on these. I don't know what the chemical composition of Virkon is, but my understanding is that when they seal their operculum, the little trap door, the Virkon can break down that seal and then get into the shell, and then it kills the animal. So other than that, steam will kill them. We just did a test with a hand sprayer, 5 seconds with a small steamer, which could be used on waders and D-nets and things like that. If you have access to a pressure washer that gets up to 140 degrees or hotter water, that'll kill them. Freezing will kill them for 8 hours. So I tell trout fishermen, if they're wearing the boots, the felt bottom boots, if your spouse, whether that's the husband or the wife, will let you throw them in the freezer, pull them off and throw them in the freezer overnight before you go to another stream. So prevention. This is what I focus, regardless of the species. Prevention is the main thing we can all take part in. These are commonly seen at boat launches all over the state. They're supposed to be at every public access for lakes and rivers in particular. They did a really cool study not that long ago. I believe the population surveyed were people who had fishing licenses. And the number one thing that people were, it was either that or maybe boat registrations, so they could capture both recreational and fishing people. There's something called social norming. You see it enough, you think, oh, my neighbors are doing that, I should do that. that's the idea here. So people are seeing this sign on the landscape and they're like, oh, this community believes in this stuff. Okay, I'll clean my boat, you know, that kind of thing. And it was actually the #1 thing in the survey that came out, people believed in. You might have also seen people doing clean boats, clean waters. Yellowstone Lake has had people there for the last few years. I can't think of another close by lake that I know for sure has had them, but that's a real popular program to get the people with the blue t-shirt. I usually wear that t-shirt for my presentations. I just didn't feel like it today. It's spring. I wanted to wear spring colors. So you see people like that for fishing. For streams, especially the trout fishermen, when we found the first New Zealand mud snails in the state in Wisconsin in 2013 is when the sample was found to have them. The sample was actually taken in 2011 or 12. We made up these signs, the warning signs, and then the River Alliance, DNR, and some other partners had also created this sign, which carries the same basic message to streams that we have on those big signs that go at the boat launch. Problem with the warning sign in particular is there's lots of other bad stuff out there. Can you imagine going to your favorite paddle site or your fishing site and you've got 10 signs? You're going to be too depressed to get in there if you have to have a warning for every particular species that may or may not be in that water. So we've got a new one coming. Tim Campbell, our communications specialist, and the graphics people just put this one together. Another thing that keeps coming up when we discover things, so with the first New Zealand mud snails, we're like, well, besides fishermen, who else is going in that water? They had major stream restoration projects going on in Black Earth Creek at the time. So there was road work being done. There was all kinds of people going in and out of those streams for those type of things. At different sites, you've got people going in to access wetlands to go duck hunting. You've got people going in just to play. Black Earth Creek, those sections of it aren't really great paddle spots. They're kind of narrow, but you might have hunters. So we got the trapper on there. We've done a much, really starting to focus on more ways things move. And then the waders. That could be a fisherman. It could be a volunteer stream monitor or a professional stream monitor. We found out when we found them on Badger Mill Creek in the Upper Sugar River watershed that sadly some of the volunteers, professional and volunteers, have been going to multiple sites without cleaning their gears. I had a stream biologist ask me, so well, NR40, does that business about the inspect, remove, and drain, never move, does that apply to streams and rivers too? I was like, I went in the bathroom, and then I screamed, and then I came back out, and I pulled the part out of NR40 and said, yes, of course it does. It has to do with anyone who gets their foot wet. One of our new audiences we're reaching are the duck hunting community. We've really been working on that. I started working on it right away when I was doing Clean Boats, Clean Waters. First day of duck hunting season, I was out there in my blue t-shirt and usually a coat and gloves and something to wipe my glasses because it seems like every time I go out on first day of duck hunting, it's also raining and foggy. But this year we actually had a special event in some key hunting areas. This picture was taken at the Mead Wildlife Area where one of our really great partners, Chris Hammerly, was doing it for the, it's an RC&D, the Golden Sands RC&D. And then the picture, it's really, I was hoping it'd be big enough to see, but Starry stonework, it's an aquatic invasive plant. It's actually a, if you're familiar with the muskgrass or what's another thing we call it? We call it Scherer, in the habit of calling it Scherer. But it's that stinky, it's actually an algae, but it looks like a plant, and you pull it out, and it's kind of crunchy, and it smells bad. It's a really good place to find your fish. Starry stonewort is like algae on steroids, and not algae, Scherer on steroids, and it gets caught. It gets caught in the decoys. It gets caught in rudders. If you fishing kayaks, you got a rudder. I just had an AS coordinator from up north tell me that she went to Canada. She's a big fisherman. She went to Canada using a fishing kayak with the rudders on the bottom. Got back home, had left it out. Fortunately, it had a good dry time. There were, she turned it over and saw dark spots. She had New Zealand mud snails she brought back from Canada across the border. that had gotten up into these rudders. I guess there's a rope system that goes through there to work the rudders. It's amazing how things can hide, and the more you know, the more you can be careful. We'll never make it. So outreach, this kind of thing, we do a lot of that besides signs. Research, not as much in the DNR because of the science services losses that I'm sure you're aware of. But we're still working with lots of partners on that and with the university system. The bottom line is don't pick up hitchhikers, and you should be cleaning your gear as routinely as you brush your teeth. I had a duck hunter say, well, I don't know about the brushing of the teeth. He said, maybe as routinely as I pick up my 6-pack of beer after I go hunting. Okay, whatever works for you. Make it a routine. Whether you're, and you have to think more about more than just the people who are going into the streams, because that's their main target. We've got people doing work. Thank you, AES, for the photo of the guys down there doing the stream restoration work. We got our volunteers. That's actually my husband on the dirt bike. People go out on these long trail rides and they're cutting across streams, and they could be cutting across multiple streams on these trail rides. They need to clean their stuff off. If they're doing any kind of big work, farmers doing contractor work for counties, mowing the ditches, that's a great way to move Phragmites. That's a picture of my own wader heel. There's nothing nasty in there, it's just rocks, but they were tiny little rocks, show how easy. Friend's dirt bike or mountain bike up there, they're running in and out just like the ATVs and the dirt bikes. So here's some specific plants. Java dropwort right here right in Broadhead, right? So the bottom picture, I believe, is what that creek looked like when you guys did the first project. So this little plant, you can ask Susan the whole story. She knows it better than I do. This is one to be on the lookout for right now in the Sugar River system, in the lower Sugar River, because it has raised its head again at the site here in Broadhead. So you can get information on that more specifically from Susan. Phragmites. So Steve just told me that there are 60 sites that they have casually mapped. That wasn't quite the right word to use. So this guy is actually, this is all the same 2 plants. So, and it grows very, very densely. So the thing is, the seed is not necessarily viable, which hopefully this is not viable seed, because I'm trying to keep it over this table so I can wipe it off. What happens with this is that every node where you've got a stem, if that gets broken off when this is still a live growing plant, roots will start to grow, rhizomes will start to grow out of it. The roots and the rhizomes also. So if you're mowing, like I showed, you can have this plant get moved right along the landscape. So this picture, I've got a pointer now. This picture is on my way home, going through Dane County, and this is in the ditch. It's kind of up on the side of the ditch. Dane County has multiple sites. I don't know if this is a county road truck or what's mowing it, or if it's a contracted one. But right around the corner, there's a wetland that I've seen from aerial images has been mowed, and it's growing in there too. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? There's no way to know. This other site we just learned about, and it's really close to my house actually. The farmer came in because he has CRP land. He's coming up for renewal on his contract. He has to deal with invasives. This is almost 3 acres that has not been dealt with yet. He has people stop by to get pieces of it because they think it's pretty. He has duck hunters come to get it that want to put it on their blinds. This much is all it takes in the wrong spot, and this will move. And if you visited Kenosha County, Green Bay, Milwaukee, you don't want this stuff getting loose. You will not see your landscape anymore. It grows to 15 feet tall. So we also get things that escape because of pets getting let loose, escaping the guards. This is from Stricker Pond, a koi. The local herons and osprey take care of them quite nicely. I do love Biocontrol. We have different ways you can take care of your things. The basics is decontamination. That's when you remove stuff. That's when you get the mud off, you get the seeds, you rinse and rinse and rinse. I can talk to you more on that on the break. Disinfection is when you want to kill something. So decontamination's easy. You look it over, you drain any water out, you scrub the heck out of it, you rinse it down away from the stream because you don't want to wash anything back. Just like away, meaning up by the car, depending on what you're doing, where you're at. Disinfection is required if you're doing anything that's permitted by the DNR or under a grant with the DNR. And this is actually a new thing. So that means you have to take extra steps. Disinfection, it depends on the species, but for the most part, if you can dry it for 5 to 7 days, you'll probably kill it. Those mud snails, if it's totally dry, they won't. If you've got moisture, they can live. If it's really dry, they shouldn't. Steam cleaning works good if you can get such a thing at 140 degrees. The chlorine bleach for some things, Virkon for everything pretty much. Freezing works for everything except fish diseases. So we had a carp virus in the Rock River system a couple years ago. That probably wouldn't have been killed by that freezing. It's required basically anytime you get wet. This is that starry stonewort, the green there. It's just crazy stuff. And Didymo, we do not have, thank goodness. It makes it almost impossible to walk in a stream. It's like, let's call it rock snot because it's so slimy. Different disinfections, methods. I've got my sprayer out there, although my hose broke, so it's not there. I can give you details on this, but we're short of time, so just ask me later. Other things you can do. So you can get grants to take care of something. You have to, if say this farmer wanted to had more acres and he wanted some help getting rid of this stuff because it's clogging his drainage ditch along with all the reed canary grass that's filled in there, he would need to, he could get an early detection type of grant to respond to that, but he'd have to do it through an organization that can apply for the grant. So something like your organization or the county, there's different ways. Right now, what Susan alluded to before is the Upper Sugar River Association has applied for an early detection rapid response grant for New Zealand mud snail response, where they're going to do monitoring. We're developing a protocol for volunteers to use, so they'll pilot that. They're going to build wader wash stations. I'm sure there's some out in this watershed already. They're going to get more of those out, do some more education on the species. Grants, Susan and Brock are the best people to talk to for those for AIS. And then for terrestrial, Kelly Kearns with the DNR, Mike Putnam are your key people. You can also share what you've learned. If you see something that doesn't look right, maybe it's because it's not. You never noticed it before. It might just mean you're paying more attention, or it might mean you've got something squirrely going on. Call a professional and let them know. I mean, you guys got AIS right here. You're like totally primed for that. And you can call me, of course. Try to pick a species a year and learn it. Get out there and look for it. And if you find it, report it. On the DNR invasive species pages, you can easily find by just Googling it, the pages to report. You can call the local office. You can contact the folks that you've got right here, then they can get a hold of us. So there's lots of ways to report. If you do find something, we got some key things. We need a sample. It can be a picture, so you don't waste your time driving a sample of something that turns out to be just native. So if you can get a really, really good picture, and we need to know exactly where it is. We need a lat long, or you need to be able to point on a map. It's right here at this road crossing and stream crossing, something like that. Because otherwise, we're just going to have to go look anyway, which we don't mind doing, but we can save some time. Oops. Permit needed. This I actually put in here for your farmer friends. In particular, if they've got something on their landscape, because it can impact their bottom line, they want to know too, I would think. Do you have to have a permit to spray a chemical? You take the wet sock test. So if the site is so wet that you're going to walk on it in your socks and you are going to have soaking muddy feet, just soaking, drenched muddy feet, you've got a case where you need to have a permit to spray, in which case the applicator has to be DAT-CAP certified for aquatic chemical usage. But there is this NR 107 waiver that if the treatment is for emergent vegetation in drainage ditches or rights of way where the department determines that fish and wildlife resources are not significant, then you don't need the permit, but the chemicals still have to be used in accordance with the label instructions. So I pulled that out of the law to make sure I had that right. And then bag and dispose anything that you cut. Lots of times cutting down the stuff like this before you treat is going to save you a fortune in herbicide, whether you're doing it as a volunteer project or a work-related project. This is one to watch for right now. It will be going into its seed stage shortly. It's called lesser celandine. It looks very much like the marsh marigold, except marsh marigold only has, it's on this next page, only has about 5-6 petals. This has up to 9 petals, and then it gets those little bulbils. So sometimes you might be too late, but you'll see a bunch of these little stems and leaves left with all these little balls all over the place. These things will wash right down the river and spread. So if you see this, let us know quick. This is a prohibited species. Glycerium maxima, this is becoming more and more a problem because it's moving this way from the southeast. This is a choked drainage ditch that I found on the way home. That's it in spring. That's it in the fall. You can see the goldenrods blooming. Around the corner from this is a little wooded wetland. The guy's property is being flooded because it grows so densely that the water is going up. And I'm way past my 5 minutes. One more. Johnson grass. This is one, a fairly new one for the fields. Real nice red inflorescence. This one is really, really difficult to eradicate. Big, big impact if farmers get this in their field. And this is one you would contact Kelly Kearns about. And I'll skip that. Anyone wants to know, I do have slides in there for more on information on how to take care of it. And that's it. Slow the spread. So I'm 5 minutes over.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Judy.